There is an unalterable law governing everything and every being.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise
I
up.
want there to be peace everywhere.
South Africa, I greet you all in the name of peace.
Good evening. I'm Jim Berg. I'm Dean of the College of Education and Public Policy. And on behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of the college, I'd like to welcome you to this crucial conversation, the Black community and law enforcement. I'm proud to represent a college that's about impact and change, with our majors in criminal justice, education, counseling. We're about making a difference in the lives of children, families, and communities. For the past 2 years, watching the events in Ferguson and Baltimore, I was struck from the appeal of the citizens of those communities that they wanted police officers and teachers that understood them and came from their communities. I felt a call to action. As dean of a college with those majors, I wondered, what can we do to bring in students of color to lead those professions in our communities? As a marriage and family therapist, my default method for creating change is dialogue. But I've wondered, is dialogue even possible with such a divisive issue as race and policing? I'm reminded of my very first client when I was a beginning therapist. I worked for an in-home court diversion program. The client, who I'll call Aaron, was an inner-city Black youth who was referred for stealing a bike. But Aaron wasn't a hoodlum. He was a creative kid who was scrawny and was finding a solution to no longer be beat up at the school bus stop. Two events stand out from working with Aaron. The first occurred several weeks into our counseling. I was at Aaron's home talking with his mother when Aaron excitedly came running into the house, waving his report card. His mom looked down at it, seeing the list of A's and B's. She looked up with a scowl on her face and said to him, "I don't know who you're brown-nosing, but you're getting really uppity hanging out with this white college kid." Aaron just melted, dropped his book bag, and ran to his room crying. A couple weeks later, I was walking to a local park with Aaron, and he was just observing a lot around him, noting all the men sitting on porch steps and more congregated around a local liquor store. And Aaron turned to me, almost pleading, saying, "I don't want to grow up and live like this, but I don't know how to get out." In both scenarios, I was too much of a novice, too green. I didn't know how to respond in any meaningful way. The reality was, I didn't understand the intricate web of poverty, education, and power. Tonight, I hope that we can use dialogue to better understand and engage young people in making a difference in their communities through doing public good. And now, I'd like to ask Assistant Professor Rachel Rayburn to please come up and talk about our criminal justice program.
Hello. Whoa, that's a lot louder than I thought it was going to be. I'm Rachel, and we've been working on this program for a very long time, I think, and when talking about I'm a sociologist, that's what I do, and I specialize in poverty, homelessness, drug use, and you just can't you can't talk about any of those things without talking about race. I mean, you can, but you really shouldn't. So when we planned this, I thought, what is the best thing to do when talking about education and race? Well, I go to Martin Luther King Jr., of course, and his 1947 article on the purpose of education. But the thing about him is that he's so good that you can't even just read a quote. You have to practice it. So for the past, I don't know, day or two, I've been practicing this very long paragraph quote by him and really emphasizing words, and I think it was great, and it's here, and I was going to read it. So right before this, I wanted a little more practice, so I met with my friend at our neighborhood bar. And they said, hey, Rachel, you look great today. What are you doing? I said, oh, my college is putting on a forum, and I'm a panelist, and I'm going to lead a discussion. They said, what's the topic? And I said, the Black community and law enforcement. And this old guy at the end of the bar says, there isn't anything to talk about. You should just give them all guns and let them kill themselves. And he was not talking about law enforcement. My response was really bad, and I shouldn't repeat it, and I probably shouldn't be telling this story anyway. But if that doesn't lead us to have a crucial conversation about this, I don't know what does. And I made it here, and no bail needed, which is awesome because my response was not very friendly to him. And he said, girl, in a demeaning way, you just don't know what you're talking about. And there was no discussion to be had with that gentleman. And I know that there's a discussion to be had here tonight. So if you want to read the quote I wrote down, it's here, and it's poignant and fantastic, but I had to share that experience. So it is my pleasure to introduce Jonathan Ray, who is the CEO of the Urban League here in Fort Wayne.
You know, boy, oh boy, I don't have any good stories. I just found out I was going to be before you like 5 minutes ago. But I can tell you one story. I've been Black and I'm 53, so 53 years I've been right here in this body. I'm representing the social status for the study of African American males. It's a statewide initiative. I'm the vice chair. Andre Patterson was going to be here, but unfortunately, he's the chair. He was not able to attend. And what the commission does is it looks to collaborate and bring people together around issues around the social status so we can look at a changed world. What we want to do in the commission is be transformative. When you're transformative, when you do a particular action, you see change. This past Saturday, we had a barbershop initiative where we informed people in 10 different locations about their blood pressure, their glucose level. So those who were living with high blood pressure or high sugar levels could take action. There was a young man on Saturday who was 22 years old, and he had a blood pressure reading of 185 over 108 and didn't know he had high blood pressure. So today, he knows and he can take the appropriate action to save his life, really. We also, every year, we have a fatherhood initiative where we try to engage fathers in the lives of their children just before school and ask them to do 3 volunteer actions in their child's school. So whether it's going back to school night, whether it's participating on a PTA, 3 things that they can call their own so we can engage fathers in the process of education in their children's lives. One last thing, it was mentioned that I am from the Urban League, and there's 2 things I try to share with people every year. Every year, nonprofit organizations like the Urban League, we know our impact is going to be seen down the line. What we try to do is share with everyone, what did we do in this year, this fiscal year? Our fiscal year starts in July and ends in June every year. In our last fiscal year, there's two numbers I want to bring your attention to in terms of our economic impact on this community of the greater Fort Wayne area. Last fiscal year, we helped 178 people find work, and that totaled more than $5.5 million in this community. We also are a HUD-certified agency. We help people buy their first home, but we also help people avoid foreclosures. And so we helped 288 people avoid foreclosure, and what that represents is about $77,000 per home, and that is equal to $22 million. So I can say unequivocally, the Urban League had a $27 million economic impact on the greater Fort Wayne area. With that, thank you for your attention.
Well, what's happening in Fort Wayne? How's everybody doing? Oh, that's kind of weak. Come on, what's happening in Fort Wayne? Oh my gosh. So my name is Irie Kedley. I'm so happy to be here. My clicker's not working. But anyway, I work for the city of Fort Wayne, and I have the privilege of leading two big initiatives for the city. I'm stationed in the Office of Housing and Neighborhood Services, and it's such a pleasure to be here. I really want to thank IPFW Dean Berg for allowing us to host this important event here. Will we please give IPFW a round of applause? Thank you. And a few housekeeping items. We have some important people in this room today. But if you guys don't mind, I've got a mom that's getting married this Saturday. Yeah, that's worth one of those oohs, right? So if you guys wouldn't mind screaming on a count of 1 and 3, let's yell, "Congratulations, Irik's mom." 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, Irik's mom. Thank you very much. And I have some family from Trinidad also here to support her. And every black male is not an African American because I'm from Trinidad. So every black male is not an African American. I'm not an African American. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, which I'm really proud to be representing Trinidad and Tobago. And I have so many family members from Trinidad here to support my mom. So if you guys wouldn't mind, on a count of 3, yelling, "Welcome to America." Ready? 1, 2, 3. Welcome to America. There you go. Now you might get a lawsuit on your hands because everybody's super sensitive, right? So speaking of important people, we're going to get this program going. This man that I'm going to introduce is our public safety director. And I thought that the public safety director was just a person who was over the police department at a high level, but I learned that he's over the police department, he's over the fire department, Homeland Security for Fort Wayne, so many different things. This is a very important job. I want to introduce to you a man that I'm a big fan of, the public safety director, Rusty York.
Well, I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. I think this is really important. And welcome you to what we're going to undertake, and that's basically a dialogue between you all and police officers. We want to leave here tonight understanding a little bit more about you, and hopefully you'll go away with a little bit better understanding of just who police officers are and what they do. I became a police officer when I was 24 years old back in 1975. So if you do the math, I'm 65 years old, almost. So I've been doing this for almost 40 years. And it's changed dramatically over my career. Because when I first came on, officers didn't have near the responsibility, near the training, near the expertise, and law enforcement wasn't always doing such a great job. I call that kind of the dragnet period, and if you Google that, you'll find that that was a TV show on back in the 60s. And back then, delivery of service was what the police department wanted you to have, basically, with no civilian input. So then we transitioned into community-oriented policing, And hopefully we're providing services that our communities wanted, the way they wanted it. And basically focusing more on quality of life issues. And that involved into data-driven policing, kind of where we're at now. No, not exactly. That is where we look at the data and put cops in places where the crimes are occurring. But then came Ferguson, and what I also like to call the post-video era of policing. Because that's really what it is. Officers are being held accountable for what they're doing, not by just a report they write, but by video that our civilians are providing. I think that's more of a good thing than a bad thing. But just like the era of policing has changed so dramatically, I've been on that journey, and I've experienced a lot of different things in my career. I've seen life at its beginning and life at its end. I remember several times sitting out when I had little ones at home, late at night in the parking lot of a hospital, weeping because I lost a little one from a traffic accident or crib death, or one little guy I'll never forget that strangled in his bunk bed. But usually, police officers develop the knack to be able to compartmentalize. He or she will do their 8 hours or 10 hours, and then they'll go home and put those experiences in a different place because they have their own life to live. But every once in a while, they'll creep back and bring a tear to your eye. And I was able to pretty much do that, compartmentalize, until an event that occurred to me in 1983, and that's when I was involved in a fatal police action shooting where I had to take the life of another person. And there was the Rusty York before that shooting and a Rusty York after. And they were so different. That situation, and I'm telling you this because this is what some of us as law enforcement officers experience. That affected me not only emotionally, but physically and very spiritually. And it changed the way I viewed policing from then on. Before that, I was doing a job that I loved. After that, I realized the stakes. That what I was enjoying before could result in the death of another person or possibly myself. So, I tell you that only to maybe a little bit better understand what officers go through. We're not perfect, but we, just like you, deal with different stresses, and hopefully we can hash some of that out here tonight. And I can tell you this situation was so profound for me that all these years later, I think about it every single day. So, again, thank you for being here tonight. I think what we're doing is so very important for all of us and for our community. And thank you, IPFW, for allowing us to use your facility. Thank you very much.
So we're getting closer to our panel discussion. One more person we're going to bring up is our police chief, Gary Hamilton. What's important here is to really witness the support from our police department. We have two of our top officials in our law enforcement agency here with us today, and that's a big deal. So with further ado, I'd like to introduce Chief Hamilton.
Good evening. I'm glad we all came out this evening. As the Chief of Police for the City of Fort Wayne, it's an honor to serve. However, I understand the stigma of law enforcement and the community of color. I represent a system that had a history of mistreatment of African Americans in this country. And so therefore, I represent a system somebody who a lot of people hate because of the past. There is no longer the Bull Connors of Alabama existing, but there is that little hint of racism that we must address. We can no longer be satisfied with being satisfied. I had a young man who expressed his relationship with the police, and he described a chance when he got stopped by the police, and he thought it was okay. The officer stopped him for not using his turn signal. The officer got him out of his car, patted him down, and searched him. His response was, that interaction was okay. That was not okay. We cannot be satisfied with being satisfied. They cannot just stop you and search you for no reason, no probable cause. But that young man thought it was okay. We got to be beyond the status quo. That, like I said, that is not okay. We must change the culture in this country and relationship. I told this story earlier today that when I was the deputy chief of Southeast Division, I attended the Great America Cleanup. And as I was walking through the neighborhood, I went door to door because I wanted to make a difference. So I went door to door, knocking on doors and introducing myself to people, helping, taking out trash. And at the end of the day, as I was walking back to my car, there was a young lady who may have been 8 years old, was with her siblings. And as I approached my car, she came up to the car and said, I want to be a police officer. And I told her, I would love to have you as a police officer. But her response to me at the time was, I cannot be a police officer because two things. My mother said I'm black and the police doesn't like me, and because of what my last name was. So at an early age, that started. The African-American male's relationship within this community, there's that hatred. But we must break the chains of intolerance. And a lot of stuff goes with our recruitment process. The Fort Wayne Police Department or public safety have to take a more proactive stance in recruiting people in the community that looks like them. We're not saying that's, when I make that statement, I'm gonna qualify that. We are not lowering our standards. We're raising the bar. We're challenging each and every one of the people who go out to recruit qualified people, not based on color, because there's a lot of qualified people that get overlooked. As we're working hard to recruit that, and I must give the Rusty York the credit for allowing me to do the things I want to do best, and that's get out and be active in the community. When he was the police chief, he didn't have the chances that I had to get out and interact with the community. I think we have started things in the community that Ferguson didn't do, Baltimore didn't do, Cleveland didn't do, Cincinnati didn't do. We started that stuff years ago, and we're starting. It's just starting. We can't stop there. We can't be like I said, we can't be satisfied with being satisfied. We must continue. So today, listen what's being said, take it, and if you have any questions, we'll be around to answer any questions, and we're here for you. Thank you.
So I have the amazing privilege of leading an initiative that comes from our White House, and that is called the My Brother's Keeper Initiative, and this is for all youth. And they ask us to look at 6 goals, 6 big mile markers that we're supposed to address. And as you see, it's ensuring all children enter school cognitively, physically, socially, and emotionally ready. We're going to be addressing 3rd grade reading, graduation, post-secondary education and training, employment for kids that are out of school, and of course, violence. And violence is something that is really hard to do intervention with, so our best bet is to do prevention. And that's what this initiative asks us to do. We also have another initiative by the name of Cities United, and the difference between these 2 initiatives is that one of them is for all youth and the other is for black men and boys, specifically for black men and boys. And this initiative is based on reducing violence and violence-related deaths amongst African-American males. And it's a national partnership. I believe we have over 76 mayors and 76 cities involved. And the first question that I'm consistently asked is why? Why black males? Hispanics die too, and white males kill each other too, because we all know that we all kill people that we're close to and people who we know. But when we go through the data and we see the slides, it shows that in every major city, there is a peak of African-American males being killed, and also on the opposite end of the gun. In every single city. In Baltimore, 80%, Boston, 62.3%, Buffalo, 67.6%, Chicago, which is outrageous right now, 65%, Cleveland, 0.2%, Columbus. And when you look at the other slides, white males are very low, black females are very low, white females are very low, the other is very low. But African-American males are 63.6% of the homicides in Columbus. Indianapolis, right down the street from us, 51.3%, white males at 23.9%. When we continue to go through the slides, we're gonna see the same thing. Jackson, Kansas City, Memphis, Minneapolis, Newark, New Jersey, Oakland, Philadelphia, Seattle even, St. Louis, and Fort Wayne. We share the same information. So we can talk a lot about what's going on nationally, but here in Fort Wayne, we have the same exact issue. And we focus a lot on African Americans killing African Americans, but we focus even more on when there's a law enforcement crisis, right? Because in just a few years, so much has happened with the crisis between law enforcement and African American males, and that's what brings us here today. So in just a few years, we're gonna go through a few of these slides and just show you guys, not to raise any emotion, but to really show that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Robbie Tolan was not killed, but was shot. All of these are gonna be unarmed black men that were shot. Oscar Grant, January of 2009. Trayvon Martin, you guys know this one, 2012. Travis Carter. Alicia Thomas. Jordan Davis. Victor White. Eric Gardner. And these are the cases that we actually see across our news screens. But so many of them, we have no idea. Ezel Ford, August of 2014. Michael Brown, we know that one. Monroe Isidore, 107 years old. 107 years old. Unarmed, shot and killed. Tamir Rice, we know that one. Natasha McKenna. Monroe Bird. Walter Scott, we know that one. Freddie Gray, we know that one. Sam DuBose. Sandra Bland, we know that one. And so many more, and the list goes on and on. So when we bring people together to have this discussion, it is extremely important that we understand why we're here. We are here to have a healthy discussion, and so many people are gonna say, well, you're not gonna fix this issue. We're not gonna fix this issue today, you're absolutely right. But we're gonna do our part and start a discussion. So we're gonna show one video, our panelists are gonna come up, and then we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of why we're here today. Thank you so much for being here.
I think that people have become used to the deaths of African American males. I think the amount of African American males that die from homicide every year is outrageous.
Disturbing to see how we treat each other and the way it's treated from those in power as far as coming up with solutions for it. And it really makes me feel like we're expendable, because when you think about the way it's not treated like a problem or an issue.
I've been working in my community for 30 years. I've cut over 28 young brothers' hair that's being killed out here in the streets because I'm a barber by profession. so many mothers in our community is afraid that when their child leave, that they ain't gonna never see their child again.
I feel like that our generation, the generation before us, the generation to come, they got the wrong perspective on how to live their life, and they out here putting all their energy and all their passion into the wrong things, and they want to be negative instead of coming together and squashing all the nonsense and the foolishness, and they want to kill each other.
I was one time almost also a victim of violence. I was shot in my face, right here, shoulder, and my back in 2007. Somebody actually shot me through the window and never actually seen who it was.
I think it's something that everybody that cares should be concerned about. I think that the crime and the death that are happening in our community are one that, as a community, we should operate as a community. I think that it's not an individual problem. When we look at it as if it's somebody else's home and not mine, it could be ours tomorrow.
We need to recognize that it's not okay to kill each other. Just imagine if we could squash all the killings and stop beefing with each other, and just imagine how powerful we could be.
Police are to serve and protect, and it's like a lack of trust between us and law enforcement.
We can't just take a paintbrush and say that law enforcement is bad. I just think that it's not all on the law enforcement. I believe that the community should be able to work together with the law enforcement, with community leaders, and to be able to create the relationship.
Law enforcement, definitely. I have a problem with law enforcement because when it comes to law enforcement, they don't abide by no rules. They don't care, and they have a band and a bond that sticks them together. Each one governs another, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times the force that they're using is not, they don't have to use such excessive force.
The situation in other states and around the country has been going on for a long time, but thanks to media such as Facebook and Twitter and all those things, is now coming to light.
From my personal experience, not all cops are bad, not all teachers are bad, not all coaches are bad, not all black people are bad. In each demographic you have the sour ones and you have the ones that are good. Locally here in Fort Wayne, I wouldn't say it's as big as an issue compared to larger cities.
Everybody got to take a role in this, and we got to quit using stereotypes and biased opinions and discrimination, which is being practiced and done to make most of the laws. So everybody has to sit at the table and just be clear.
I feel like we need to come together because it's getting out of hand, honestly. There's too many back-to-back incidents where you can just shake your head and be like, that's not right. Something has to be done.
All right. We're going to welcome our panelists and we're going to dive in. So I'm going to read their names and then you can give us a nice round of applause at the end of it. We have officers and community residents and a few students from IPFW. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hand when I read your name, we have Mr. James Matthews. We have Brittany Brown, Deontay Davis, Cicely Beeman, Keon Oakley, Tony Moore, who's a Cities United representative, and Tony is definitely a representative of everything. He works at T-Mobile. Don't ask him about phones. He'll sell you a phone in a second, even if you don't need one. Julie Yunker, who's the police chief for IPFW, Bobby Lemon, Jacob Lemish, and our clergy, our Cities United pastor is Pastor Luther Whitfield, who's all the way to the right. He's the pastor of New Covenant. So let's dive into our questions and give him a round of applause for being here. All right, so the way this is going to work is we're going to ask a question, to our panelists, and the same question will go to our officers. And the only thing that we ask is that they be respectful and that they be honest, transparent. We're not asking anybody to curb anything. We just want respect, and we want them to be honest. That's why we're here. So first question, and anybody can take this one. Growing up, what were you taught about police, and how has that impacted your perspective on law enforcement today? So growing up, what were you taught about police, and how has that impacted your perspective on law enforcement today? Anybody? Dive right in. Yes, sir, Tony.
What, can you hear me? Everybody hear me? I don't think there was anything particularly that I was taught, like any police officer any adult ever told me about a police officer. Everything was basically based off of experience. So when you're a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, and you see your uncles and cousins being arrested for things that you didn't, you know they didn't commit a crime or a murder in your opinion, and then you have peers going through the same things, it kind of builds bad blood between you and officers without even that first initial occurrence. I mean, not only that, but we learn in school about the 1950s and 60s, so just that builds bad blood, and it's more of a subconscious thing between both groups. So nothing that I was generally taught about law enforcement, but overall observation growing up built my perspective today.
Okay. Anybody else want to dive into that one?
I'm the opposite. I had a neutral idea about police officers or law enforcement because I didn't have any experience with them. I wasn't taught good things, bad things, and it wasn't until I became a police officer that I got to know about law enforcement.
Okay. So we got two. Yes, sir.
My name is James Matthews, and growing up, I was taught that the police were supposed to be supportive, nice, things of that nature. Many of us met the police in our local elementary schools, yet at around 16 years old, when I had first contact with the police, I discovered the stuff that I was taught wasn't the same. I was taught to respect the police, but I lost respect for them because they didn't respect me when we had contact with one another.
Okay. Who else? One of our beautiful women. Would you address that question?
I feel like, just like Tony said, I don't really remember being specifically taught about police besides, that if I needed help, they would help me. And I haven't had any, well, when I was a kid, I never had any bad experiences, so I always thought that the police were good. So I grew up thinking, they would always protect and serve. But I do know that through experiences that it's not all police, in my opinion, that are good or bad. I think there's a mix of both through growing up in my experiences.
So you would give them a fair shot?
Right. I feel like there's, mostly for the good, I know that there is a little bit of negativity, and that's what they like to publicize the most. So.
Okay. Keon, give it a shot.
I was taught that they were supposed to protect, and I still feel like they're here to protect us.
Say that again?
I said I was taught that they was here to protect us, and I still feel like they're here to protect us.
You still feel that way?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Wow, that's wonderful. Let's go to the next question. To the officers, why did you decide to be an officer?
Well, I chose to be a police officer because when you're looking into a career, the main thing you look for is stability. At least in my case, I was looking for a career with stability. And face it, we're always going to need police officers. It's always going to be there. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home with law enforcement. My father is a police officer, and he's currently a police officer on the Fort Wayne Park, the police department also. So I wanted stability in my career. I wanted success, and I wanted a job where the success I got is what I put into it. And that was my main point or reasoning for becoming a police officer, is to be successful.
Chief Younger, how about you?
Like I said, I didn't have anyone in my family or personal knowledge of anyone who was law enforcement, but when I came out of the military, I decided to look into different jobs, and the description of a police officer fit me to a T. So it was like the things that a police officer would do are the things that I felt were strengths that I had in my personality.
Okay.
For me, it really started when I was younger, watching Cops and Law and Order, which got my interest started. And I later found out that's obviously not what it's like. But it can be pretty rewarding to go out and make a difference, to help someone. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, was make changes. Try and go out there and obviously get bad people off the street, but to help the good people too.
Now, there's some of our community residents that believe that some police officers wanted to be police officers to misuse the authority and the power that was given to them. Can one of you guys speak to that? As far as your experience with that, is that true? Can that be true for some?
I'll speak to it. I not only have been in law enforcement for over 20 years, but I also trained law enforcement officers at a recruit level. And I can say I personally have seen people enter the profession and they don't have the right temperament, and that their goal is to be in charge. And they came into the profession for the wrong reason, and most of them exited the profession in a very short manner. If it wasn't through FTO, through the field training, then it was because they weeded themselves out within 5 years for doing stupid things.
And no different than any other field, right? I mean, we have some doctors that enter the field for different reasons than to help people. We've got, no offense, Pastor Luther, we have pastors that enter the field for the wrong reasons, right? We've got professors, we got all the different ones, right? So it's no different for police officers, right? All right, let's go to the next question. So, Keon, do you trust the police?
I trust everybody to a certain extent because, like, everybody human. Like, everybody got, like, a side to them that people get mad, people get mischievous, people do all kind of stuff. So, like, I trust them, but, like, to a certain extent.
Okay. Is there a specific reason you trust them? The why? Why do you trust them?
Because, like, if I'm going to need them, Eric. You know, I'm going to need them. Sometimes there's going to be a time that I'm going to need them. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Tony, how about you? Give us an honest answer.
I second that to an extent. I would say I trust the police more because who else am I supposed to trust if I need the police officer's help or help from anyone in police enforcement? But due to my own experience and my family's experiences, I do have that arm's length distance because my father sued the Fort Wayne Police Department for beating him. So I have that in me that, okay, they need to be trusted because at the same time, who am I going to trust to protect me and my family? But at the same time, can I give this person all of my trust and end up being a statistic or a risk factor because I wanted to give them trust? So it's kind of a sticky situation. I would say I do, but I'm going to always have that subconsciously in me, like, I don't know if I could trust this person all the way. But then again, that's generally for any human that you meet. You're not just going to give anyone full trust.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, my name is Cecile Beeman. It's okay.
I apologize.
It's okay.
Good grief.
Cecile.
Correct me.
You sound like Michelle. But me, honestly, it's half and half. Just like they said before, if I'm in a situation where I need someone to help me, if I'm in a car accident or I need to take my children to the hospital or something, you know, that's detrimental, of course, I would have to put my hands in the trust of them at that point in time because who else I'm going to trust? I might be too out of the mind to think about something. Mm-hmm. They've been trained to take care of certain situations where they have to be in that type of mindset, and that's something I would need to trust. Just like if I was to go see a doctor or someone about my education, I had to put that type of trust in them for that minute. But to an extent, of course, like my mother always taught me to be observant. If you see something that's a little shady, ask questions, get some type of understanding so you know what's going on. So, like I said, to a certain degree, I do trust them to a certain point.
Has the media impacted your level of trust towards police officers in the last few years?
The media just pretty much pinpointed and showed me that there are shifty officers out there. Not saying that they are all out there, but you never know who you're going to run into. And those ones who are acting out of character are just the ones that are caught on camera, and then that lets you at least know there are some people out there who abuse their power, and there are some good people out there, because I also see officers hanging with the children in the community or playing football or dancing with them. At the same time, I see the same ones misusing their power. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that perspective. Yes, sir. Deontay, go ahead.
Where I come from, I don't trust the police, but to be more realistic, I do trust the police, because at the end of the day, if something happens, them the people that I'm gonna reach out to.
Okay.
So I do trust them.
And when you say where you come from, what do you mean by that? Can you expound on that?
Like my neighborhood,
okay,
my community.
Okay.
You know, just for the simple fact that the people that I know and I'm associated with, they don't really deal with the police. So
okay.
I can't deal with the police. You know what I'm saying? My friends don't do it. So,
Right.
you know, it's just a thing of trying to be cool.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Okay.
but to be more realistic, I do trust them.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for being transparent. Let's go to the next question. So this is to our police officers, and I want to start this off with Pastor Luther. Pastor Luther, what do you think of the negative stereotypes in regards to police officers that is everywhere in our culture right now?
And I think you're right. I think you said it right. I think it is everywhere. I think, unfortunately, it takes a few bad apples that, just spoils the whole barrel. And so, like you've heard so many of the panelists already say, that you can't just blame one individual or group of people and then say all of them are bad. And I think, unfortunately, so many of them are taking bad raps because of what you see, whether it be painted on Facebook or what you see the media display or that type of deal. There are, as you stated earlier in the opening dialogue, there are bad people, unfortunately, in all professions. And so, just as you said, to some folks may have had a bad encounter with a bad pastor or minister. Doesn't mean all ministers are bad, or you had a bad experience with a doctor. And so, unfortunately, I think, many of our officers, and I have a brother who is an officer, who was an officer rather, he's retired now. Unfortunately, you got people who are dedicated, committed, put their life on the line every day, and yet there are some, unfortunately, who take, as the young lady said, their power to their advantage and abuse it, and that itself tarnishes the badge that they wear.
Okay. Let's have one of our officers take that question. We'll let one of you guys answer.
For me, it's frustrating because I don't fit the mold of what's negative out there. I'm out there just trying to do my job, just like everybody else that goes to work every day. But social media, I think, and news in general, just a bigger story to focus on the negative. And I think on both sides of the coin, law enforcement and not law enforcement, we need a lot more positive stories out there. Because there are a lot of things that we do every day that don't necessarily make the news that are positive. And we're not doing it for recognition, it's just part of our job. So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would say to see all the negative, it gets a little frustrating at times.
Right, that a few bad apples have stereotyped you.
With social media, it makes it a bigger deal. Not that it's not a big deal, but an even bigger scale, because it's focused on so much.
What's your goal when you get in your car every morning? What's your goal? And I've heard this from many police officers.
Go home.
Go home. Is that it?
Part of it, I mean, that, and like I said earlier, to go out and make a difference.
Okay.
I mean, there's people that need our help. I want to get there in a timely fashion and actually be able to help them.
Okay.
But also at the end of the day, I want to go home.
You got that look on your face. I think you want to answer. Lemon, Mr. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't sure his point now. I agree with the pastor and also Officer Lemish. Mainly with the pastors, I think that we as officers automatically get put in as a group as a whole. With every group, there's always going to be a bad element, and no one wants to be compared to that bad element. I can say I take it on both sides, because myself being a male black, I'm not always in this uniform. This uniform comes off when I go home, and I have regular clothes just like everybody else. But do I want to get put in that category, being a black male, also being involved in drugs and things that, so I get it from both sides, and nobody wants that stereotype. But people, you have to remember that, like the pastor said, not every officer is doing things that they shouldn't. There are officers out there doing their job, what they're supposed to do. Tony, you said you learned things from the 1950s about police officers. Things have changed in law enforcement since the 1950s. 1950s, there weren't very black officers or minority officers. We've moved beyond that. And I would like to see our community move further than comparing one bad officer that you see on social media to everybody.
Well, since Tony was brought up, Tony, we're going to ask you the next question. Do you ever feel like you are racially profiled by police?
I would say from time to time. For the most part, I always try to conduct myself as an intelligent individual, perceived that way in the way I dress and I speak. But sometimes when I'm around my friends growing up, I don't want to have to oblige to the social norms that will make me seem like I'm the citizen that they want me to be. So I'll hang out with my friends who with tattoos and sagging jeans or whatever they choose to wear. And sometimes, yes, I feel like we went to the 99-cent store to get some brushes the other day and the lady followed us through the store. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I've never been to prison before. I have no type of criminal history, but I'm not going to say it's an everyday basis like police are watching me at every corner, but yes, whenever I get pulled over at night, first question is always, do you have anything in the car? And I don't remember ever a time where I didn't get frisked that night after getting pulled over past 9 p.m. So I'm not going to say, because it might be procedure. I'm not a cop. I don't know if they do it to everybody, but I know my personal experiences. Every time I'm pulled over after 9 p.m., the question is there anything in the car I need to know about? And I've always been frisked every time.
How about our women? Do you ever feel racially profiled?
Believe it or not, there was a situation where I was racially profiled. It was during the summer. Me and my boyfriend was on the porch, and we seen a lot of cop cars coming down the street. And I'm figuring, I always say in my head, well, they're looking for somebody. So my boyfriend went into the house to go check on something on the stove, and the police came running. They stopped in my area, and they came up to my house. At the time, I was wearing twisties in my hair, natural hair. So I had twisties in my hair, and I had on a t-shirt, and I had on some shorts, and I had my head down because I was just looking down at the ground. And the police officers, 2 of them came after me with guns, and they said, get down on the ground, get on the ground. And I'm getting down, I'm like, what's going on? And I guess my guy came out and was was asking the question, what is going on? Because they had me on the ground, and they turned around and put him down on the ground. And come to find out, they were looking for a black male with dreads, t-shirt, and shorts. And me and my boyfriend both had twisties in our hair. We both had t-shirts on. We both had shorts. So after they realized that I was a girl, they let me go, but they went and questioned my dude, and they put him in the back of a cop car. They ended up finding the gentleman who had the dreads, who had the shorts, who had the t-shirt, and the gym shoes. So at the time, there's 3 people in the row that had the same description they was looking for. Only thing I was a female. And that was my first time ever being racially profiled like that. And it was very scary because, just go from a calm moment to a hectic moment that quick, just because, I know they was looking for someone, but just to realize how quickly, like everyone in our community, we don't all look the same, right. But, if you fit the description, of course, someone is going to come after you.
Right. That's interesting. Very interesting. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I've been racially profiled too. I grew up in Noblesville, Indiana, where the population's 2% black. And my mom was always pretty generous with her car. So in high school, I used to drive her car, which happened to be a Lexus. One day, me and my brother were driving maybe to the store around by our house, and we got pulled over because the officer said the color of our car wasn't the right color on the registration. He said our car was silver, but it was more of a purple kind of color. It's not very common. And he kept us on the side of the road and asked us, where were we going and all of these things. And even as a teenager, I remember being so upset, there was absolutely no reason for us to get pulled over besides the fact that we were two young blacks in a new Lexus in Noblesville, kind of when we were out of place. That's how I felt at the time when I was a teenager. So I feel like, yeah, I've been racially profiled by police.
Wow. So we got yes on both sides, and male and female. We've got one more question for this session, and it's probably one of our most controversial questions, and it goes to the officers. And this is a very, very sticky question, but we're going to ask it. I've talked to another officer who said the word excessive force probably not be used, but we're going to ask the question. Have you ever had to use excessive force? If so, how did that make you feel? Or tell us about the definition of excessive force. Just expound on that, and then we'll end our first session with your answer.
I'm going to say, I've been in this career for 15 years. I've never had to use excessive force. The force that I've used has been adequate to the situation or the problem that I've been faced with. Whether somebody else may see that as excessive I can't determine that. But if you're not in this position, if you're not in law enforcement, you wouldn't be able to tell what force is adequate. I've never pulled somebody over, drugged them out of the car, and prone them out on the ground unless there was a reason for it, unless it was an adequate reason. We got to remember, our job is mostly reaction. We react to what we're presented with. So what we do is determined on what we're faced with. Most suspects out there know exactly what we're going to do. If we say, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest, we're going to arrest you. Whether you choose to do that compliantly or not, that's up to them. But no, I've never used excessive force. And on this department, I haven't seen where there has been excessive force used with the officers that I work with. Now, have there been things that I haven't agreed with? Yes. And they were dealt with. But no, I've never used excessive force.
And we'd like to dive in more to this question, but honestly, for the sake of time, because we're a little behind, we're going to jump to the end of our first session. And we're going to introduce Mr. Joe Jordan, who's the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, who's going to take you through a nice, fun feature of our session. Give him a round of applause.
Good evening. Sorry about that. I hate going after Derek because he got this real rich, sexy voice, and here I am, right? This is the fun part where you guys get an opportunity to participate a little bit. On your tables, there should be some clickers. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and you get to guess the answer, and we'll accumulate the answer on the screen above. Okay, the first question. In 2013, how many white males do you think were victims of homicide in the U.S.? A, 0 to 500, B, 500 to 1,000, C, 1,000 to 3,000, D, 3,000 to 6,000, E, 6,000 plus. All right. Everybody got a chance to vote? It's calculating. Here we go. So that is your answer. So most of you all thought it was B. Is that correct? B? Yep. All right. So remember that as we move forward. Second question. In 2013, how many Hispanic males do you think were victim of homicides in the U.S.? Same. A, 0 to 500. B, 500 to 1,000. C, 1,000 to 3,000, D, 3,000 to 6,000, and E, 6,000 or more. All right, a little higher. So we went with C on that particular question. Third question, in 2013, how many black males do you think were victim of homicides in the U.S.? Again, the same multiple choice. A, 500, 0 to 500, B, 500 to 1,000, C, 1,000 to 3,000, D, 3,000 to 6,000, and E, 6,000 or more. All right, I think I could have guessed that one. E, 6,000 or more. And so our perceptions about who's getting killed in our country, I think we all have the same perception that African American males are probably the most victimized of violence in our country. And so actually the answer is Hispanics, 2,132, whites, 5,393, and African Americans, 6,937. So most of you guys got it right. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Derek Westfield, who is the Deputy Chief for the Southeast Quadrant of the City of Fort Wayne. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So we got those stats there, okay? As you all guessed, African Americans were the most killed. But the thing about this that sticks out is that if you look at it, the population in 2013, Hispanics was 27,460,892,000. That means 8 in every 100,000 Hispanics are going to be the victims of a homicide. Whites were 123,559,280. That calculates that whites would be 4 in every 100,000. The astonishing thing about this is with African Americans, we only make up 20,934,741. That means 33 out of every 100,000 blacks will be killed. If you look at those stats, just think about that. It's so disproportionate as we've shown thus far. So I just wanted to bring that to you and just think about that. That's astonishing. So with that being said, I'll have Mr. Headley come back up.
All right, now we're diving into session 2, get more into our questions for our panelists, which is why we're here. So the first one is to our students and our panelists. So I was not born this way. At one point, I was going in the wrong direction. And on the streets of Fort Wayne, there was a no snitching code, right? And it simply means that if somebody did something wrong, you don't tell on them. You keep it to yourselves. So on the opposite side, in the police department, they call it a code of silence. At least that's the word on the street. So we want to ask our officers, do you think that there's a code of silence within the police department, within the police culture, amongst police officers? Is there a code of silence? Can we ask our officers that question?
I think there is a code of silence that some officers take advantage of. So not all officers participate in the code of silence, and not all officers, I think, are willing to cover up anything and everything. The code of silence is probably not as, it doesn't go to the extent that maybe it seems that it would. But I think that bad officers do cover up for other bad officers. There's corruption.
And what extent would you be talking about? Like if 2 officers are at a subway and They're not supposed to be on a lunch break or something? What exactly are you
I
talking
think, yeah, if that's considered a code of silence where two officers stay longer than their break allows, then that probably does happen, you know, from time to time. But when we talk about heinous things that are happening and that officers are covering up for, I think that's a lot more rare, more few and far between. But bad officers cover up for bad officers. And then sometimes officers don't cover up for bad officers, and the bad officer is surprised that he didn't get that, you know, professional courtesy or whatever people like to call it. So I think it exists, just maybe not to the extent that it's out there.
So not like we see on like Law and Order or...
Right, or what was the other, some of the Badge or whatever the shows are, yeah.
I'm engulfed in the state against OJ right now. I'm like loving that show. And it really is changing my perspective on the LAPD. It's gotten a lot worse. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of this whole CODIS. You guys are not watching this OJ thing? You guys aren't watching that? Am I the only guy that loves that show? Really? Raise your hand if you love this OJ thing that's going down. My son, put your hand down, because that makes me look like a terrible parent. My son is like, I love OJ. You can't admit that in front of all these people. One of our officers, can we get one more answer? Is there a code of silence between the police?
I think she nailed it as far as bad officers will cover up for bad officers. And it is rare, I think, but with, like I said earlier, social media, it'll blow something up like that up.
Okay.
But from what I've seen, no. I work with a good group of people out in the southeast quadrant, and we're not trying to cover up, but they're also not doing anything that we need to worry about covering up.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I believe there's a brotherhood that I feel like everybody in blue is a brother or sister, that we're each other's backup.
Yeah, but not in a negative way or
no,
a legal way. Okay. So let's flip the question to you, Keon. Let's go to the next question and ask the question that I talked about earlier. Is there a no snitching code on the streets of Fort Wayne, and especially in black communities?
Is it?
Yes, is there a snitch code? You see somebody do something drastically wrong, let's say you know somebody committed murder, would you tell the police?
No.
Say again?
No.
Why?
I just wouldn't feel safe, because like I didn't see people tell or about to tell when they end up dead, or I didn't heard of that, so no.
So it's more of a safety issue versus a culture issue?
Right.
Okay, you're shaking your head, would you agree?
I totally agree. In that the same situation where I was profiled as the gentleman with the dreads, there were a group of people that was standing right next to my house that seen the whole situation go down, and they knew who the gentleman was the police were looking for. And as I'm down on the ground, I'm looking at them like, y'all know who this guy is, because he just went into y'all house. And they looking at me, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, you know, it kind of made me nervous. It made me scared. Like, you know, there's someone, I'm innocent as all could be, just sitting on the porch, and they don't help. But that's totally understandable. You tell, you get in trouble. Granted, I really wish that people didn't feel this type of way, because if it was somebody that in your family that was killed, and you knew who it was, of course you're gonna tell. Of course you want somebody else to tell, but at the end of the day, like he said, it is a safety thing, because you never know what the reason for that killing was. Was it drug related? Was it for something, you know, something more serious? And could you be the next target?
Right.
I'm a mother of 2 boys, so I have to be careful. At the same time, I have to also teach them certain ways of the world. So.
You're a mother of 2 boys.
Mother of 2 boys.
And you're also the homecoming queen, is that what I hear for our people? Give her a round of applause. She's the homecoming queen. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you need a king, I know a couple guys.
I'm good. I got 2 boys to do. I'm good.
Cool. I just want to offer that. Deontay, I want to push back on that a little bit. When I used to listen to rap music, right? I had a little bit of music industry experience, right? And I remember when Busta Rhymes' bodyguard was shot and killed in front of him. Busta Rhymes saw the face, he saw the person, he knew who it was, and he didn't tell, and turned around and rapped about it. So the hip hop culture promotes this message of don't snitch. So I want to ask the question again, but can you dive a little deeper about the culture, the hip hop culture that promotes the don't snitch value system? Is that true?
Yeah, it is true, but I really don't understand, like, the police, they work with the criminals, you know what I'm saying? they allow somebody to snitch to get like a lesser sentence. So that like defeats the whole purpose. Like, why you gonna arrest somebody and then say, if you work with us, we're gonna let you free? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you just deal with everybody the same? And then, you know what I'm saying, don't let these people go free. I'm talking about the criminals, not the average citizen that'll snitch on the, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I just feel like I couldn't snitch though.
You couldn't?
No, I couldn't snitch.
Couldn't snitch?
But I just think police, they just, you know what I'm saying, with the criminals, they need to be more strict. You know what I'm saying? And don't let people go free. You know what I'm saying? Just by telling.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah. All right. I remember when I was also working at this youth center, we outlined the definition of snitching, right? And snitching was a deal between two criminals. I go do something wrong. This other person comes with me, and we make a deal that you're not going to tell on me, I'm not going to tell on you. And we break that code. It's like character between crooks. And that is the true definition of snitching, is a deal between two guys that say, we're going to do wrong. If you don't tell, I won't tell. One of them breaks that silence, and they snitch. But if my wife is sitting in her living room and she watches Keon get shot and killed, and she says something, that's called social responsibility. And we want to really outline and differentiate between those two, especially for our young black people who don't know the difference. We really want to do that. So I want to make that clear to everybody in the room. At this point, we are going to skip two of our questions, again, for time's sake. And we're going to bring Mr. Joe Jordan back up, the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. Have you guys seen Joe on the GQ magazine last month? Have you seen him on there? You didn't? Well, here he is. You can get a good look at him. Here he is, Joe Jordan.
You ought to get that copy if you haven't seen it. But anyway, a couple more questions. Again, audience participation. And the first question we have, do you think the lack of community cooperation hinders law enforcement's ability to solve local murders? Do you think the lack of community cooperation hinders law enforcement's ability to solve local murders? A, yes, B, no. Overwhelmingly, yes, is your answer. Second question, should black-on-black homicides be treated differently than police-on-black homicides? Should black-on-black homicides be treated differently than police-on-black homicides? A, yes, B, no. Okay, so 70% says no. Now I want to bring Derek up to wrap it up. Thank you.
A few stats for you. According to the Bureau of Justice System, 1 in 3 black men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. So if you look around here, 1 out of every 3 black men here, according to statistics, you will go to prison. That's incredible. Individuals of color have a disproportionate number of encounters with law enforcement, indicating that racial profiling continues to be a problem. I would say yes, definitely. I'm a larger African-American male. When I go out with a hoodie, regular street clothes on, I've been followed. I've been profiled, so I understand what it's like. So what I would say to the African-American men out there is, know your rights, know what can and can't be done to you. And when you know different things like that, and if you present those to officers, if you feel you are profiled, then a lot of times you'll see that if that does happen to you, they'll back down. When I was stopped, it wasn't here in this town, but it was other places, so it does happen. Next, I want to introduce a video to you. This is going to be a video by Cities United live session.
My experience at the focus group was amazing because I've never been in a group or a gathering where we could really express our issues, our concerns with people in power, you know, within the city, local government, you know, and just being able to hear some of the experiences from my peers in the room was definitely powerful, and also getting educated about the statistics and what's going on a nationwide scale was definitely informative and also enlightening.
To me personally, it was amazing because I had never been in a situation where there were so many just brothers ready to work, educated, just focused on one thing, which is just what is the problem? Let's figure out this problem. Let's do something about it.
Learning experience. You know, I got to interact with a guy in the police force, like the chief, and you know, a lot of people don't get to experience that. I met the dean of law, Andre. A lot of people don't get, they giving us opportunities.
The Cities United live sessions were absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. We were able to share our opinions, and I was able to hear other African American males' opinions as well, which is very encouraging to know that we're all capable of seeing what's going on out there. I know I was shocked that some of the statistics just blew me away and blew all of us away.
Living in Fort Wayne for some time now, I've never had anyone bring up these issues and, you know, bring it to the light and say, hey, this is a problem that we're having nationally and locally. And so, what do you want to do to fix it?
With the focus groups, I feel like action is actually being taken to improve on the problems. You know, so I feel like the focus group, it actually gives, you know, us African American males here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, an outlet and a way to actually, you know, take action.
And everything that we feel and we think, being able to share with people who could help us is something that we don't come across too often. So I love the experience, you know, and definitely encourage more people to get involved when we have more. So I really enjoyed it, and it was empowering.
I have a voice now, but I want to be able to speak with my actions. I want to show you that I'm here for positiveness and for a good change. I'm here. I put my passion into it. I put my soul into it. I put my everything into it because I want change. And I feel like Cities United is something big.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be a part of Cities United. It's definitely a great experience. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. It really is amazing. It really is amazing. And yeah, I look forward to the future.
That's me. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. I actually think that part of the answer to the problems that we've been discussing tonight have to do with the law. And as the founding Associate Dean of the newly accredited Indiana Tech Law School, thank you. I actually believe that having young black men in particular, but minorities come to law school is part of the answer. And we're a place that welcomes students of color. 2015 was a heartbreaking year if you, like me, saw the deaths of Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Ray Dubose, the list goes on. It was also a heartbreaking year if you learned, like I did last year, about the statistics that you've been shown earlier, that African American deaths in most of the major cities in our country are 70% of the people that die. I believe that that represents a crisis. I believe that that represents something that we must take immediate action to changing. I believe that it's unacceptable for unarmed black men to be killed. And I believe it's unacceptable that 70% of the deaths in our country, in all of our major cities, are African American. And so we're here tonight to talk to you about what we think part of the answer is to that problem. Cities United is a national initiative instituted by the White House with My Brother's Keeper that allows us to try to make a difference and change what we identify as the problem. If in fact African American death in our country is an epidemic, if it's a crisis, then that's going to require all of us to make concerted effort to change that problem. And we believe that Cities United is one of the answers. What we do with Cities United is we gather groups of young black men together with Ira Kedley, who you've met tonight, with Chief Gary Hamilton, who you've met tonight, with Deputy Chief Derek Whitfield, with myself as a dean of a law school. And we sit and talk to these young brothers about life and about that epidemic and that crisis. And we don't tell them what we think the answer is. We ask them, what do you need? What is the answer? How do we fix this problem together? And how do we figure out a way to preserve and maintain and value your lives? Because they matter. Sure, all lives matter, but not everyone's getting killed at a rate of 70% in the United States and all of our major cities. Those are young black men that are getting killed and are killing. And that's a problem that we have to figure out how to solve. And I can't begin to tell you of the 4 or 5 forums that I've been fortunate to be involved with, how heartening and hopeful those sessions were. To listen to these young black guys tell the police chief face to face, look, I'm terrified when I see the Fort Wayne Police Department. This is no disrespect on the Fort Wayne Police Department. I have a lot of respect for Chief Hamilton and Deputy Chief Whitfield. This is just about being terrified of the police. And having the police chief say, you know what, I hear you. And that's a problem that we need to bridge. And let's figure out how we can make this not a terrifying experience when you get pulled over by the police. And to hear young black men tell us, what can I do? What are my rights? What are my abilities? And for us to be able to say, here's the law. Here's what the law tells you can do. Here's what you can do to be safe and be smart. And our message more than anything else to these young black guys that you just listened to is you have to live. You have to be smart and live your future. And recognize that there are problems that we're trying to solve and you can be part of the solution too. But really, ultimately, that's our message. Your life is critically important. I don't know where you are religiously, but if you believe in a God, your lives are incredibly important to a God in heaven. And they're incredibly important to leaders of our city, to our police chief, to our Cities United initiative. And let's figure out a way together to solve this crisis. But we're taking it to the streets, folks, and that's what Cities United is all about. So tonight on your tables, there are Cities United sign-up forms. If you are somebody that wants to be involved in Cities United, we invite you to be involved. If you're a young black male and you want to participate in a forum, we encourage you to sign up and participate in the forum. And if you want to help us do our own little part in solving the crisis, then let us hear from you. Let us know, because we are going to initiate aggressive efforts in the city of Fort Wayne to be part of the answer to this problem, not just talking about it, but doing. So please sign up, please participate, please be a part of what we're trying to do, which is to ultimately value, preserve, and maintain the lives of young black men in Fort Wayne and across this wonderful country of ours. Thank you.
The video you're about to see will demonstrate the do's and don'ts of a traffic stop as a motorist. Traffic stops are one of the most dangerous investigations that an officer faces on a daily basis. We recognize this fact and continuously train on techniques that provide us with the most tactically safe approach to each stop. Let's take a look at a traffic stop that falls in the category of the don'ts. Officers are trained to be good observers, and the entire time that we are conducting the stop, we are intently observing your actions.
Ma'am, can you keep your hands on the steering wheel, please? Ma'am, can you keep your hands on the steering wheel, please? North 412, can you send me another unit? My driver keeps reaching around in the vehicle.
Suspicious movement in your vehicle is a potential danger sign for officers. As officers, we know that there is a direct correlation between suspicious movement and attacks on officers during the stop.
Ma'am, I'm Officer Lemon, Enforcement Police Department. The reason why I'm stopping you is you disregarded a stop sign. In the future, ma'am, when you're involved in a traffic stop, please keep your hands on the steering wheel at all times.
I was just getting my license and registration.
I understand that, ma'am, but for your safety and ours, please keep your hands on the steering wheel at all times.
Okay.
Ma'am, I need your license, registration, and proof of insurance.
Now, let's take a look at what to do. Once you realize an officer is in the process of conducting a traffic stop on your vehicle, immediately signal indicating that you're pulling to the right side of the roadway and come to a complete stop.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Officer Lemon, Enforcement Police Department. How are you today?
I've had better days.
The reason why I'm stopping you is you disregarded a stop sign back there. I just need your license, registration, and insurance card, please.
Okay. Let me get my purse, my license.
Okay, feel free, ma'am. Thank you.
I can get my registration out of the glove compartment.
Okay, go right ahead. Thank you. I'll be right back with you, ma'am. Thank you.
Remember to remain patient as the officer now verifies your information through local and state databases.
Ma'am, here's your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. Ma'am, just remember, next time you come to a stop sign, come to a complete stop before you proceed through.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You have a good day.
Thank you, officer.
Well, the video pretty much said it all. A traffic stop is hands down, the officers will agree with me, the most dangerous investigation that an officer can do. And basically it's because there's no good way to approach a vehicle that is safe for an officer. If you approach on the driver's side, on the interstate, you run the danger of getting run over by a vehicle. You also run the danger of the driver being able to shoot you. If you walk up on the passenger side, same difference. You run the risk of the driver or passenger being able to shoot you through the rear window. There's just no good way to approach a vehicle. That's why we're always extremely cautious when we approach the vehicles. We'll call for backup, or backup will just show up due to the nature of the danger of the traffic stop. Basically, you know, like the video said, just keep your hands on the steering wheel, be polite, provide the proper documentation, tell the officers I'm reaching into my glove compartment to get my registration. We understand that that's where everybody keeps their registrations, and we understand that you're nervous. I mean, we get nervous too. You know, we see lights, you know, when we're in private vehicles, red and blue lights go on, we get just as nervous as everybody else because we don't know what we did, but something's coming. But we all know to keep our hands on the wheel, and we tell the officer, I'm an off-duty officer, I have a handgun in my pocket, I have a handgun in my console. If you have a handgun in the vehicle, tell the officers you have a handgun in the vehicle. Tell them right off. Don't reach for it. Don't say, hey, I got a gun right here. Just tell them, and they'll take care of it, okay? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Karcher, and I work with IRIC at the City of Fort Wayne. And this is a chance for you all to do some stuff right there at your table. You've heard tonight from our wonderful panelists some stories about how they're proceeding through life and some of the things they've encountered, but I'm betting at every table in this room, y'all have some stories. And what we'd like to do now is in that packet that's on every table, you'll see some colored sheets, some green and blue colored sheets. Somebody at your table is the table leader, and if there isn't one, please volunteer to be the table leader. Talk to each other a little bit about how can we, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, take some steps to begin to improve community relations between the African American community and law enforcement, and see what kind of ideas you can come up with and see how concrete you can be. Talk amongst yourselves, come up with a few ideas, Julie Sanchez from the city of Fort Wayne is going to be floating around. She actually floats. It's amazing. And helping with anything. We'll collect the papers at the end, and if we have a little bit of time to look at some of your ideas, we'll begin to discuss them. This is where we start to take the next steps in this process. So please take about 15 minutes right now, work as a group at your table, and let's see what we can come up with to move ahead on improving community relations. Thanks.
All right, so the question that we asked was, how can we improve the relationships between black males and law enforcement locally? And each table worked on that. Some of the tables aren't done yet, but we're gonna throw out the input that we got so far. A big part of this is really getting the input from all of you, our community residents. The Cities United initiative is really based on a lot of data and the input that we get from the community to address the disparities that we see. So, when we ask that question, how can we improve relationships between law enforcement and black males? And I would just say communities of color in general. And a lot of what I've read so far really are talking about what we already are doing. So I would say that we do have a head start here in Fort Wayne. We are making history around the country. We're one of the first cities in the US. I'm connected to a lot of cities. And we're not the only, but we're one of the first cities in the United States of America to be addressing these issues proactively instead of waiting for a Ferguson to take place. Thank you. And that's a big deal. So thank you to all of our Cities United people for throwing this stuff out. So, big ideas. Somebody said that law enforcement needs to treat youth with respect, improve the officer training to weed out bad officers before they get to the actual police department. Let's ask one of our panelists. Give us your opinion on the training of police. How would that make a difference in the black community? Is it a lack of training? Is it an attitude? Tell us your opinion.
I personally feel it's an attitude. I believe each individual carries their own attitude, and sometimes that attitude and your morals and beliefs come into play. To improve the relationships between black males, you must respect the black male, period. When you have white officers patrolling black neighborhoods, communication is different. Language is different. There's barriers. So they speak two different languages. When that situation happens and the black male is disrespected in the first couple of words, the attitude is instantaneously defense. I have to defend myself and my character. So that badge is no longer respectable if you don't respect the individual that you're dealing with. And that's from the bottom of my heart. I've been through a lot of situations. I'm a military veteran. I used to carry a gun in the United States Navy. I was the military police. I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1993. I bought a 1987 Ford Mustang convertible. 8 days later, a white officer pulled me over, asked to see my driver's license and registration. And because I obtained a driver's license from Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, he told me, "Nigger, what you doing driving this type of vehicle?" And he took my driver's license. He took my vehicle. I worked hard in the United States Navy and saved that money. I went to Desert Storm and I protected this country. 8 days later, I was humiliated living here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yes, sir, go ahead, answer the question.
We can improve the relationship by us black males choosing better activities to engage in, like to leave the streets alone, start going to school, you know, start surrounding ourselves with better people, dressing better, talking better, and just stand up for ourselves in a better way and stop accepting the stereotypes that they place on top of us and just rise above and be better.
Maybe he should have been hosting the show tonight, right? Sit me down. Let's jump to one more question. We have a lot of things here that obviously I'm not going to get through. I just want to read a few of them. Minimize consequences if not a serious infraction. That would ease the tension. Ride-alongs in the police department. We have so many different sheets here, and most of them are saying events like this, keep doing this. Well, whoever those people are, we will. Except he's going to host the next one because he's smarter than I am. So again, we're very, very encouraged to see that we're getting recommendations on things that we are already doing. Implicit bias. Address implicit bias. That's what this says, implicit bias. Who wants to raise your hand? We've got 5 minutes left in our program, and we have to get all these beautiful people home on time. Who wants to talk about implicit bias? How do we spend time addressing implicit bias? Come on, nobody wants to answer that? How do we spend time addressing implicit bias? I know somebody has something on that. Implicit bias. So implicit bias is a woman goes to a hospital. Let's say a black male goes to a hospital and he has some medical condition. They assume, so they run specific tests that only test AIDS. Because they think, well, a black male in this age group from this side of town living over here and he does that, he must be homosexual or he must be this or he must be that. So they only test certain things. That's the implicit bias. I've got an intelligent brainiac for a son. Implicit bias would be his teacher saying, he's a young black kid. Let's not put him in those classes. To make sure he succeeds, let's put him at a lower class. That's implicit bias. When you have a bias that's internal and you make decisions from that bias, implicit bias versus explicit, where it comes out. So address the implicit bias. How do we address implicit bias? Where we have officers that are walking up to cars assuming that because you have a certain type of rim, I've got rims on my cars, believe me, I love them. I've got some woofers in my trunk, I got some nice amps. I love that stuff, love it. I love music. I've got tweeters, I've got diamond audio in the doors, I love it, right? So if an officer walked up to me, because laughing at my car, because my officer walks up to me and sees my rims and he assumes, oh, he's black, he must be in trouble. He must be a troublemaker. That's an implicit bias. Or a black male thinking, because this officer is walking up to me, he must be racist. He must go shoot me, let me take off and run, right? It could be fair, but it's also implicit bias. How do we address implicit bias? Give us the short answer.
Building that bridge between cultural understanding. If you don't know something, of course you're gonna have plenty of questions and fear from it, but more activities like this, more activities where the police officers are incorporated into the communities, understanding where children are from, understanding where black male and women are from, and certain minorities. Getting out there and getting involved helps people understand the difference between what's going on versus trying to generalize everything. Because when you generalize a lot of things, you make up a lot of assumptions. And at the end of the day, you're looking crazy. So I feel like that building that bridge between cultural understanding would help. And even in training, building bridges between poverty and that cultural understanding will help those people understand and realize certain aspects and certain stereotypes that can actually be broken down just by your own understanding and your own experience in that field.
Okay, good answer. Who else? Give us one more. Implicit bias. How do we address those things?
I was just gonna say by accepting that they actually occur, that there are biases that you have internally that you might not even know, but stop and think about the fact that, this actually happens. That's what I think.
Okay. And do we know that implicit biases happens on applications? Hiring, implicit biases. When people say, oh, this person must be black because of their name, those are all implicit biases. At this portion of our session, first of all, give yourselves a round of applause for being here. I appreciate it. The last person, the second to last person, I'll come back up again and show my face, but the second to last person that we want to hear from tonight is Pastor Luther Whitfield. Give him a round of applause.
Let me just, I wish we had more time to really to dialogue and to dive into some of the stuff that plagues our community in regards to officers and black males. I think number one, these kind of conversations, these kind of dialogues are essential to really help us to get to know each other so that we can overcome those kind of biases that are out there. But if I had to say anything, I think listening to tonight, I think one of the voices that are missing are the voices that I get to represent, unfortunately, so many times, are the voices of those individuals who have died because of violence in some kind of way. I think those are the voices because so many of us are pastors, and I know for myself, who have done a number of funerals this year for young African-American men. I think the thing that hits me more than ever is that whether it be from violence or whatever the case it may be, I wish those brothers understood that they don't only hurt themselves. They're not the only ones that go to the cemetery and be lowered, but they leave behind a legacy of their own children sometimes who have to grow up without having that dad in their lives anymore, or the mother who has to bury not only her son, but her hope and her vision for what he would become, or the father who has to bury the son who he would hope do better than him. And so that's hard because oftentimes you have to leave words that would try to encourage and build up the family. So that's frustrating for me. I'll be honest with you. That's frustrating for me because you are the last voice that hopefully others would hear. And though I do understand why you wouldn't snitch, the tragedy with that to me is when we don't say nothing, we are saying something. When we don't speak, we are speaking. And therefore, we are saying it's okay to continue to go down this path. And, you know, it's okay for our young black men to die. And so, I guess for me, you know, I've sat on these panels for a couple of times now, and I guess I will continue to come, and I'm going to continue to sit on this last end of the table because I believe until these young brothers and sisters' voices are heard and we come together, we're not going to see change. And I will continue to do funerals, and our young people will come and pack up our churches because somehow we have begun to celebrate death, rather celebrating life and becoming all that we can be. So I hope we get something out of it, even though we didn't get to say all we wanted to say. I hope what little bit we did glean is that, you know, we got to work together as a community if we are going to see change. Thanks.
So the last thing that we want to say is just simply thank you. Again, as Dean Cummings said, our Cities United live sessions are small groups for young black males. We want you to sign up. I consistently hear how young black males do not have a voice, or we're giving you a voice, and we want to hear your voice. And Dean Cummings, myself, Police Chief Hamilton, Deputy Chief Derek Westfield will be in the room on that day, which is April 30th, which is next Saturday, right, Dre? And what building is that in Indiana Tech? The law school. Indiana Tech Law School, we will be having a Cities United live session, an acronym for listening to input and voices through engagement. We'll provide lunch, and we're going to dive into discussion. And Chief Hamilton is as raw as they come. He really is. He's an amazing man. Him and I are going to Alabama. The 30th, I'm sorry, it's not. 23rd is my mom's wedding. Good God. The 30th is our live session, the 30th, which is not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, April 30th. So please sign up. If you're an African-American male, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear from you. And again, thank you for being here. We want to thank everybody on this screen here. Mayor Tom Henry, I will not be able to do what I'm doing here without Tom Henry bringing this initiative to Fort Wayne. Rusty York, who was here, who was very transparent, Chief Gary Hamilton, Derek Westfield, who's been an amazing ally with this initiative. Michael Joyner created the video that you guys saw, wasn't here today. Andre Cummings, Dean of Law at the law school, Joe Jordan, President and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, and Michael Armstrong Jr., who's our Cities United Millennial. And we also have Tony Moore, who represents Cities United. And where's Dominic? Is he here? I think Dominic had to leave early because he has a daughter, I think had something going on. But Dominic is also a representative, and Orlando Smith. Where's Orlando Smith? Raise your hand, Orlando. So we've got some young black males who are really engaged in this work, and we want to thank every last person that's here. We also have a planning team. Julie Sanchez, please stand up, Julie. I know you're going to get mad at me, but stand up. Raise your hand. Give her a round of applause. Derek Westfield, stand up. He's a part of our planning team. Joe Jordan, stand up. Mr. GQ. You'll see him on next month. If you didn't see him on last month, he'll be on the next month. And we have Rebecca Karcher. Rebecca, stand up. Rebecca's such a good colleague of mine. And she makes me feel so confident because she's always making sure I get things done right. I call her Tamara. My wife's name is Tamara. And whenever Rebecca's like, you should have done that, I say, thank you, Tamara. Internally, I don't say that to her because she's known for telling people off. So. But we just want to say thank you to everybody. We want to say thank you so much to our panelists. This was a very short session. We did not have time, but thank you guys so much, each and every one of you. And IPFW, thank you. Dean Berg, Linda, you've been great to work with. Thank you. Who else? Cameo Perry. Stand up, Cameo. Stand up, Cameo. Stand up, Cameo. Cameo Perry does so much work behind the scenes. She's our assistant, and she's great to work with also. Thank you, guys. I see so many advocates in the room. We typically focus on who doesn't care, but we have so many people in the room that are youth advocates that care about our community, and especially African Americans and the well-being. Thank you, guys, for coming. Have a great night, and hope to see you again at our next forum. Thank you so much.